Hey, federal employees, a good ruling just dropped late yesterday from a federal court in California, and it's a good deal for federal employees, government contractors, and any nonprofit that receives federal funding. The court issued a preliminary injunction that partially blocks the Trump administration's executive orders targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion, and so-called gender ideology programs. Now, the key word here is partially. The judge drew a very clear line in the sand, blocking the parts of the orders that cut off funding while allowing other parts to move forward. Let's break down what was blocked, what wasn't, and why the court's reasoning is also so important for the rule of law. First, let's talk about what the judge blocked. The court enjoined the administration from enforcing three key provisions. First, the equity termination provision, the quote, gender termination provision, and the quote, gender promotion provision. Essentially, these are parts of the executive orders that directed federal employees to cut the checks to terminate all funding for equity-related grants and for any program that promotes gender ideology. The court found these provisions are likely unconstitutional for several powerful reasons. First, separation of powers. The judge found that the president cannot use an executive order to unilaterally cancel funding that Congress had specifically authorized. For instance, some of these nonprofits receive funding under laws like the Ryan White program, which explicitly requires funding to be distributed based on health equity to address how HIV disproportionately impacts certain communities. The court said that the president can't just ignore that congressional mandate. This is stuff that makes sense and any reasonable person wanting to help people would agree to. Second, free speech. The court ruled that the government can't use its funding as a weapon to suppress ideas it deems dangerous. The judge found that the executive orders were specifically targeting speech related to DEI and the existence of transgender people, which amounts to unconstitutional viewpoint discrimination. And third, vagueness. Specifically for the equity termination provision, the court found the term equity related to be unconstitutionally vague. What does that even mean? The judge pointed out that the government refused to offer a clear definition, which involves arbitrary enforcement and forces organizations to guess what speech or activities are forbidden. Now, here's the other side of the coin, what the judge did not block. This is just as important. The court allowed the certification provision to move forward, right? This provision requires federal grantees to certify that their DEI programs do not violate existing anti-federal discrimination laws, which they shouldn't have been violating in the first place. So the judge's logic here was critical. Since the provision is only targeting programs that are already illegal under long-standing civil rights laws, it doesn't create a new penalty or unconstitutionally restrict speech. It's simply requiring grantees to follow the law as it already exists and as almost everybody does. So the court drew a bright line. The administration can require grantees to follow existing established anti-discrimination laws, but it cannot create new vague categories like equity-related to unilaterally cut off funding for programs that Congress has approved. So what's the bigger picture here for federal employees in the nation? Well, the ruling is a significant affirmation of checks and balances. It reinforces that federal funds appropriated by Congress for specific purposes should not be impounded or redirected by the executive branch simply to achieve a different policy goal. It protects the integrity of congressionally mandated programs, and importantly, the judge refused the government's request to pause this order, so this injunction blocking the funding cuts should be in effect right now. This is a complex and developing area of the law. So what are your thoughts on where the judge drew the line? Let me know in the comments, and please share this with anyone who needs a breakdown of this important ruling. And please feel free to follow us for more legal analysis on issues affecting federal employees. Click the link in our bio, or to get on our free daily newsletter so you don't miss anything, go to fedlegalhelp.com/newsletter. Thank you, everybody, and hope you have a great day.